The All Blacks are heading into one of the biggest challenges in world rugby. New Zealand are preparing to face the Springboks in another massive chapter of rugby's greatest rivalry. And this time, there is a warning coming from a man who knows exactly what it means to wear the famous black jersey. Former All Blacks fly half Nick Evans has opened up about his memories of facing South Africa and explained why the current Springboks team could present an enormous challenge for New Zealand. For Evans, this rivalry is not just another international fixture. It is part of his rugby identity. It goes back to the moment when he was just 16 years old, sitting in Auckland and watching one of the most famous All Blacks victories in South Africa. The final whistle sounded. All Blacks captain Sean Fitzpatrick was exhausted, down on all fours and celebrating with every ounce of emotion he had left. New Zealand had beaten the Springboks 33-26. And the victory secured a historic series win on South African soil. The decisive moment came from legendary All Blacks star Zinzan Brooke, whose long-range drop goal helped seal the result. For the young Nick Evans, that moment was unforgettable. He jumped up and down in front of the television. At that stage he was simply a passionate rugby fan. He had no idea that one day he would become an All Black himself. But that match showed him exactly what the black jersey represented. And decades later he still remembers it. For Evans, the All Blacks are more than a rugby team. They are national heroes. New Zealand has a unique sporting culture and rugby sits at the heart of it. Generation after generation has grown up watching the All Blacks. Young supporters wear the black jersey. They watch the biggest matches with their families. And they dream of becoming part of the team one day. That was exactly how Evans began his journey. He remembers watching the 1987 Rugby World Cup while wearing his own All Blacks jersey. At the time, he did not think professional rugby was necessarily going to be his future. He was a small player. But the performances of the All Blacks inspired him to keep playing. Then came another generation of stars. The 1996 All Blacks became heroes for the young Evans. And one particular series against South Africa left a lasting impression. New Zealand had lost the World Cup final to the Springboks the year before. But in 1996 the All Blacks responded. They won the opening test 23-19 in Durban. Then they finished the job at Loftus. For New Zealand, it was a historic achievement. For Evans, it was inspiration. And now, years later, he is watching another All Blacks generation prepare for another major battle with South Africa. This time, however, Evans is following the action from Japan. The former All Black has entered another chapter of his career, moving into coaching with Toshiba Brave Lupus. After many years with Harlequins, he has taken on a new challenge and a completely different rugby environment. But despite being thousands of miles away, his attention remains firmly on New Zealand. And his assessment of South Africa is clear. The Springboks are extremely strong. That is the major warning for the All Blacks. According to Evans, South Africa have built something bigger than a team filled with individual stars. They have created a system. They have depth. And they have players who understand exactly how the team wants to play. That could be one of the biggest advantages for the Springboks. When one player comes out, another can step in without completely changing the way the team operates. The players understand the game model. They understand their roles. And they know the physical standards required at international level. That kind of consistency is extremely difficult to develop. But South Africa have managed to build it. And that is why this series could be such a serious examination for New Zealand. The All Blacks will have to deal with a Springbok side that can maintain pressure for long periods. South Africa are known for their physical approach. They are comfortable playing in high-pressure environments. And they have developed tremendous confidence through years of major international competition. But the All Blacks have their own strengths. New Zealand have historically been one of the most creative teams in world rugby. Their ability to move the ball, attack space and create opportunities remains a major part of their identity. The challenge will be combining that creativity with the discipline required against South Africa. Because against the Springboks, mistakes can be punished quickly. The smallest lapse in concentration can change the momentum. That is why the opening stages of the match could be particularly important. New Zealand will want to start strongly. South Africa will want to establish control. And both teams will know that early momentum could have a major psychological impact. Then there is the venue. Ellis Park is not simply another rugby stadium. It carries history. It carries atmosphere. And it has hosted some of the most memorable matches in international rugby. For an All Blacks player, entering that stadium to face South Africa is a moment that can define a career. The pressure will be enormous, but so will the opportunity. This is exactly why Nick Evans believes the occasion will be special. He has experienced the rivalry. He understands the emotional weight attached to it, and he knows what it means to play South Africa on their own ground. For the current All Blacks players, history can become either pressure or motivation. The great teams of the past have already achieved incredible things. But the current generation cannot simply rely on history. They have to create their own success. That is the challenge facing New Zealand. And it is also what makes this series so fascinating. The Springboks are not going to be intimidated by the All Blacks' reputation. They have built a reputation of their own. South Africa have shown that they can compete against the best teams in the world. They have developed tremendous depth. And they have created a culture where players are expected to understand the system before they even enter the biggest international matches. That is the conveyor belt Evans was talking about. The Springboks can continue producing players who fit their structure. For New Zealand, that means the battle will be about much more than individual matchups. It will be about systems. It will be about decision-making. It will be about discipline. And ultimately, it will be about which team can execute its plan under the greatest pressure. There is another fascinating element to this story. For Nick Evans, the All Blacks jersey represents a connection between generations. He once watched the great players from his living room. Those players inspired him. Then he became an All Black himself. Now he is a coach, watching a new generation of players attempt to create their own legacy. That is one of the most powerful parts of rugby. The sport constantly passes inspiration from one generation to another. A child watches a match. A player becomes inspired. That player eventually reaches the international stage. And then another young fan watches them and dreams of doing the same. For New Zealand, that cycle is deeply connected to the All Blacks. The black jersey carries the history of the players who came before. Every new player adds something to that history. And against South Africa, those expectations become even greater. Because this is one of the few rivalries where history is almost always present. The 1995 World Cup final. The famous 1996 series. The battles that followed. The World Cup encounters. The unforgettable victories and heartbreaking defeats. Every generation adds another chapter. And now the next chapter is ready to begin. For South Africa, the objective will be to continue their strong momentum. For New Zealand, the objective will be to prove that the All Blacks remain capable of competing at the highest level against the world's toughest opposition. The key question is simple. Can New Zealand match South Africa physically while still playing the attacking rugby that has traditionally defined the All Blacks? That could decide the series. The All Blacks will need patience. They will need accuracy. They will need discipline. And they will need their experienced players to guide the team through the biggest moments. At the same time, the younger players will have an opportunity to show that they belong on this stage. For them, this is not just another test match. It is a chance to experience one of rugby's greatest rivalries firsthand. And that is why Evans' memories are so relevant. He understands what it feels like to watch this rivalry as a teenager. He understands what it feels like to eventually become part of the All Blacks. And he understands the difference between watching the pressure from the outside and experiencing it on the field. Now, as a coach, he can see the game from another perspective. He understands the importance of preparation. He understands the value of a clear game plan. And he understands why South Africa's depth makes them so difficult to challenge. The Springboks have created a culture where every player understands the responsibility of wearing the green and gold. The All Blacks have a similar tradition. That is why this matchup is so compelling. Two proud rugby nations. Two famous jerseys. Two teams with enormous expectations. And one stage where there is no hiding. The atmosphere at Ellis Park will be intense. The players will know exactly what is at stake. The supporters will demand intensity. And every decision will matter. For the All Blacks, the goal will be to remain calm and trust their preparation. For the Springboks, the goal will be to impose their strengths and force New Zealand into uncomfortable situations. The opening exchanges could tell us a lot. If South Africa gain early control, the All Blacks could face a long night. But if New Zealand can establish possession, control the tempo and create attacking opportunities, they can make the Springboks work defensively. That battle between control and creativity could become one of the defining themes of the series. And then there is the psychological battle. Neither side will want to give the other confidence. Neither side will want to make unnecessary mistakes. In a rivalry this intense, momentum can change extremely quickly. One brilliant attacking move can lift an entire team. One defensive stand can change the atmosphere. And one perfectly executed kick can alter the scoreboard. That is why these matches are so difficult to predict. The history tells us one thing. Expect the unexpected. But one thing is certain. This is a rivalry that continues to matter. And for Nick Evans, it will always have a special place in his rugby story. He was once the teenager watching the All Blacks from Auckland. He watched Sean Fitzpatrick celebrate. He watched Zinzan Brooke produce a legendary moment. He watched the All Blacks defeat South Africa in a series that became part of New Zealand rugby history. Those memories helped inspire him. Now, decades later, he is watching another generation prepare for the same challenge. And his message about South Africa is impossible to ignore. The Springboks are strong. They have depth. They have a clear system. And they have players who understand exactly what is required. But that is precisely what makes the All Blacks versus Springboks rivalry so special. When two great teams meet, history becomes motivation. The pressure becomes opportunity. And the players have a chance to create memories that can last for generations. For New Zealand supporters, this is another moment to believe. For South Africa, it is another opportunity to prove their strength. And for rugby fans around the world, it is another chapter in one of the sport's greatest rivalries. The All Blacks have their history. The Springboks have their own incredible legacy. But when the whistle blows at Ellis Park, none of that can win the match by itself. The players must perform. The plans must be executed. And the pressure must be handled.